Ladies and gentlemen,
There's more than deer in that patch.
meeting for the Township of South Park for Wednesday, April 24th, 2024. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be advised, the Planning Commission will make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors regarding the application being reviewed this evening. These recommendations will then be reviewed by the Board of Supervisors for a final decision. The next Board of Supervisors meeting is scheduled for Monday, May 13th, 2024 at 7 p.m. in this location. Any resident who wishes to express a concern with tonight's recommendations are encouraged to attend the Board of Supervisors meeting. Additionally, the Township of South Park records all public meetings. Roll call. Russ Bracker, here. Adrian Weil, here. Mark DePratis, here. John Papenchak, here. Rob Devine, here. Patrick Sable, here. James Wakehoff, here. Dan Diezeroth, Township Engineer, here. Carolyn Yankel, Planning Consultant,
Here.
Thomas Bonity, Code Enforcement Officer, here. We need a motion to approve the minutes of the March 27th, 2024 regular Planning Commission meeting. So moved. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion is carried. So on tonight's agenda, we have Majestic Woods, preliminary plans, and as a reminder to everyone, last month we tabled this to allow the developer to provide responses to comments from our last meeting, also to get response from Allegheny County. So we have gotten a response from Allegheny County, and we do have, I'm sure, some updated information from the developer. So would you like to please step forward, state your name for the record so that our transcriptionist.
Good evening. My name is Mike Wetzel. I'm with the firm of Victor Wetzel Associates. I'm here tonight representing Majestic Woods LP, and we're here tonight for the continued review of the Majestic Woods preliminary subdivision plan. As you recall, Majestic Woods is a proposed preliminary subdivision plan of a total of 108 single-family lots on Sleepy Hollow Road. Now, as you had mentioned, we're here tonight just to give a brief roundup in regard to what has been resubmitted to the township in regard to our application. Since the last planning commission last month, we have made response letters in regard to both Gateway Engineers review comment letter dated April 11th, and we've also supplied a response letter to the Allegheny County Economic Development letter that was dated April 1st. With that, we made some slight plan revisions in regard to responding to both of the applications or the review comment letters. And some of these changes that we have here tonight were mostly really along Sleepy Hollow Road. But other items that took place, there were some housekeeping items in the Allegheny County Economic Development, some drafting, some notes added to the plan, the dimensionings or labeling of sidewalks. They have all been added to the plan. But really, the only change that has taken place since last month is right along Sleepy Hollow Road itself along this particular area. One thing that we have done is at the entrance to the development on Sleepy Hollow, at the culvert, the developer has provided that he will revise one or both of the culvert walls if needed to allow for a 22-foot wide cartway and to allow for a better alignment associated with the plan or access within the plan. Within your package, you provide this little drawing. We'll be able to make some changes to the wing walls, create a little bit better alignment along the access into the roadway area, so that there's some better movement. We're also making that road 22 feet wide, which means the requirements for the cartway width through here will be doing no curbing within that area. There is no existing curbing within Sleepy Hollow Road where it is paved. So that will take place at the culvert
So
location.
the culvert will, its current width is 18 feet, if I remember.
19 feet along and through there. So we'll be making alignment, we'll be making some,
It'll be 22.
correct, paving width will be 22 feet wide. And really kind of adjusting the angle associated as part of your package into here to make it a little bit better angle.
Sir, we can't hear back here. Could you speak in the microphone? We
Get
can
a microphone.
Can I move this one up closer?
Get a microphone.
How much closer? I'll just talk louder.
It's not gonna help.
So,
If you need to, you could speak to it.
well, I'm also kind of referring to the drawings, that's why it's kind of important for us to stand over and through here. Maybe I'll go over there. But this way I'm walking.
You guys don't have a portable microphone, wow.
So, the other changes that we're doing in regard to Sleepy Hollow Road, really, there is already an existing paved area through there. It's running around 19 feet as well. We'll be widening the existing paved area to 22 feet wide and providing a 2-inch top coat to that area. Once again, no curbing associated with that portion of the road that takes place right along this particular area. From this point here to our property line, it is a gravel road. We already said that we were going to approve that road to township specifications for paving, but we'll make that paving, once again, 22 feet wide within this area and through here, meeting all the township requirements for the paving depths associated with that. And then also within that plan will be no curbing. The paving that's really within our property frontage meets all the requirements in regard to the road right-of-way. We have a 50-foot road right-of-way where we have property on both sides. We have making it to the township standard 22-foot cartway, plus the curbs associated with that, as well as stormwater management with inlets through here. The area between our property line at the end of Sleepy Hollow, that's an existing 33-foot road right-of-way. We can't take any additional right-of-way off of property that's not owned by us. So that will be maintained as a 33-foot road right-of-way. One thing to just note, the plans in through here, all of our lots are actually larger in lot size than the surrounding neighborhood units. When we do have the Edward Drive and Patricia Drive, those lots are averaging about 60 to 65 feet wide. Once again, our plan, all of our lots will be a minimum of 80. And then also within the Old Post Road location, the lots located along through here, those lots are only running around 75 feet wide. So actually, once again, all of our lots will be larger in size than the existing neighborhoods. They're 80 there. With that, one other item that we looked at that was brought to the attention during the meeting was the concern of the buffalo and the disturbance of construction or this residential development. One item that was pointed out not only during the meeting but also in the news agency buffaloes are disturbed very easily by noise within 3 miles of where they live. So, one thing that we did as an exhibit.
That's a mistake. Sorry.
We have an area where we have a 1 mile radius from the location of the Buffalo Preserve location. Within that area, we have an apartment building and townhome units. They're about 1,100 feet away from where the buffalo are. We have the Neil Armstrong Middle School and the construction site that's taking place for there. That's about 3,900 feet away.
Yeah, it's a mile.
We have the wave pool located right along the way.
It's really noisy swimming.
So we have the wave pool that's 2,400.
Ladies and gentlemen, please allow the developer to speak so that everyone has a chance to speak tonight.
And once again, we're making these comments because of comments that this residential development will be a detriment to the buffalo. Yes, everything that we're talking about here has noise. And once again, what was told at the meetings was a 3 mile radius. I'm only talking within a mile radius of the site. And actually, all of these items are less than a mile radius. So the wave pool is about 2,400 feet away. We have a public works warehouse. That's about, that's about 1,900 feet away. We have a deck hockey facility located right here.
Ladies and gentlemen,
We have a deck hockey facility that's about 2,000 feet away. We have the South Park Dog Park. Once again, all the barking of the dog, which is back to back. Once again, these are just comments that we're taking in regard to what this residential development. We're just a single family residential development. So what's the difference between some of the dog park and some of the existing? We also have a newly constructed playground that was built. We had construction in this playground area. This area is only about 550 feet.
There's a lot of people back there that want to hear you.
There you go. Pick it up and hold it and talk into it.
Landon, that hands time. How about that?
Microphones.
okay,
We have a newly constructed playground, which is only 550 feet away from where the actual buffalo pens are located through there. We have the fairgrounds located right through here. Those fairgrounds are about 1,600 feet away from the site. We also have an amphitheater where music takes place. That is located right over through here. And we also have the high school stadium over and through there. Both of those areas are about a little over 3,000 feet away. We also have the Model Airplane Club landing strip that takes place through this section. So one of the most important things is Corrigan Drive. Corrigan Drive is a road that has over 8,000 cars that travel along that.
25 miles an hour.
And as you know, a lot of motorcycles travel along Corrigan Drive. Corrigan Drive is only 150 feet from where the buffalo pens are located. So we wanted to just give a relationship more to the planning commission members of really what takes place surrounding the buffalo, the pen location.
It's topography.
is there,
So what we wanted to be able to say is, we're a single family development. Single family developments already take place close to where the buffalo pens are located. The township comprehensive plan and future land use plans recommend that this site be used for residential. We're here tonight for residential. So we're here tonight seeking the planning commission's recommendation in regard to the preliminary subdivision plan for Majestic Woods, 108 unit, single family. Glad to answer any questions the board might have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tisera, as township engineer, do you have any comments to share or any questions for the development?
With regards to comments on the current plan that has been submitted, as outlined by the developer's consultant, the major changes that have been made are to bring Sleepy Hollow up to a reasonable standard and a safe traveling path to allow vehicles to get out of the development. And as he outlined, the road will be reconstructed, rebuilt, widened as necessary to achieve a 22-foot wide cartway, which is the township standard for a residential street.
No, it's
So
not.
that's the biggest change related to the application of the plan that was highlighted in our letter this month. With regards to other requirements for preliminary plan approval, as I think I told the board last month, the plan, in terms of engineering standards, we follow the subdivision and land development ordinance in the township. That ordinance sets forth certain requirements for like road grade, where the sewers are located, how the stormwater management's supposed to be built. All of those things have been provided. This is the preliminary stage. If it would move forward to the final stage, it would be back here with more engineered drawings that follow a higher standard for final approval. So tonight is really just, they provided enough information that verifies that this project can be built. That's why it goes in 2 stages, and then they come back the second time with more engineering, more reports, more information that would be for a final approval. And if the development would be approved in final form, they also have to give third-party permits, which include a federal permit for an NPDES permit, which would scrutinize all of the things that we've already looked at in terms of grading, drainage, and other things that are involved in the physical construction of the project. There's also a permit for sewers that are required. There's approvals required from the County Conservation District. And then on top of that, if the development reaches all those hurdles, then there's a requirement for the developer to enter into a developer's agreement with the township, which is a standard agreement written by the township that requires the development to follow the approved plans. So our goal is to make sure when it comes through this whole process that it's built to high standards that are industry standards that will ensure that this site is safe and can function and can be built upon as a residential development. And then the job then is to make sure that those plans are followed in the field. And then there's inspections involved, certifications involved. So I'm just giving you this all to tell you that, there's a full process beyond this. We're only at step number 1 related to the preliminary plan. So in my opinion, they've met the standard for the preliminary plan. And if there's any questions you have for me, I'll go on.
Thank you, Dan. For the Allegheny County letter, is that something that you could speak to as far as what Allegheny County asked of us?
Sure, the county.
Could you go to a microphone?
Yeah, good idea. Go to a microphone.
Yes, please do.
Could you go up to the microphone? Dan? Thank you.
So, as a standard, the plans are required to be submitted to the Allegheny County Economic Development Office for review in terms of planning. The township did receive comments back from the Allegheny County Economic Development Department, and basically their concerns were all related to Sleepy Hollow Road, and that it was, needed to be upgraded, or it didn't meet the current standard at the time that they received the plans. Since that time, the developer has agreed to further expand his off-site improvements to address those concerns. So that's kind of a summary on it. There were a couple other minor comments that that they made, but they weren't anything of any substance, they were just notes and so forth.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gagel, as our planning consultant, do you have any comments or questions?
In terms of the previous review letter that we had.
Microphone.
Microphone.
Can hear you.
Thank you.
In terms of our previous review letter, the items that have been addressed as part of the updated information, that has not changed any of the things that are part of our review. Our review focuses on the contents associated with the zoning ordinance and the zoning districts being R2 and R1. These are base zoning districts within South Park Township, just as many of the other neighborhoods within the community are. And in terms of the components of lot size, lot widths, and all of those kinds of dimensional criteria, the plan, as you have seen it as part of that past review, and our comments do conform with the requirements of the districts. And I have no other questions, I think, for you all as a planning commission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, we cannot hear over here, back here. We cannot hear.
Okay.
Get in here.
Tom, are the speakers on out there?
No.
I have no comment.
Okay, let's pause for a moment while you check.
No, there is speakers out in that hall. I had to, should have moved into the auditorium.
Tom, while you're up there, Mr. Vonity, as Township Code Enforcement Officer.
No comment.
Okay.
You expected all these people. I mean, you should have.
I think
It's out there.
Did that work? I think it's the speaker out there.
Once I sat in front of it.
So. Okay, so are you able to hear out there now? Well.
Well.
Okay. So before we call on the people, we do have Ms. Joan Carmen has a letter that she would like to read to the Planning Commission and to the public. So Ms. Carmen, please.
Thank you.
You may want to move the microphone so it's closer.
I am Joan Carmen, Gary Carmen's wife. I'm writing this letter on behalf of my husband, Gary Carmen. May he rest in peace. I have ignored all the petitions and problems to take care of myself and my husband during a very difficult time and did not attend the last meeting. These past years, we, the owners of Becca Land, have had multiple contracted agreements for Sleepy Hollow and property, and my husband's dream never produced. He only had his last days defending his own land and his rights. As a reminder, there was a petition brought forward when Red Rock Group canceled their contract on April 2023 due to the issue that the townhomes being denied by the township. Townhomes were not a part of the property, that was zoned for. And we lost that based on the denial. And we, Becca Land Development owners, understood that position. There was a first position at the time and I might add, no mention of the buffalo were included in this first petition. Now, we have Northwest Land interested, who are major developers for many years, who would like to put single-family homes on the land and would agree to sell on the land, and we all agreed to sell the property once again. And this time, they are moving forward in accordance with the present zoning. Any owner of personal property has every right to sell. Gary spoke at the first meeting 2 weeks after being life-flighted to the hospital with a heart aneurysm. He said that he paid taxes for years, and people walked, hunted, and rode their horses on his land while trespassing for years, and that that was at the owner's liability. When he spoke at the very first meeting, he said that Becca Land Development was surrounded by 2,000 acres of land belonging to the county, and why wasn't that enough for the petitioners? We now had 2 petitions, both with different issues being addressed. The first petition never even mentioned the buffalo, and now the buffalo have become a major issue. Why? Is this because the petitioners are trying to work at the heartstrings of animal lovers? Are the people even aware that the buffalo have roamed all Allegheny County Park for over 100 years and were dedicated 200 acres, not contained, and also were moved around the county many times over the years? They are now given only 9 acres contained in a fenced-in area. What happened to the buffalo's rights? And is that really fair to them if you're worried about the buffalo? No. Now, is it also fair to the families who have paid personal property taxes and has not had their rights acknowledged? Most of the petitioners are not even from South Park, and many have signed more than once. South Park residents have concerns, I'm speaking, as well, and 43 to 60% of our land is tax exempt. That means that around 56% of South Park taxpayers pay for the bulk of the taxes here in South Park. And this property would bring in 108 homes to help pay towards 56% towards that 56 responsibility. So we the owners are not only the ones benefiting from this endeavor. The Becca land is under contract, and we the owners have a contract beholding to them. Gary did not know he was dying, so there was no deathbed wishes. My husband had no idea that he knew he had a fatal illness, but he did not know the time frame, and he assumed that he had at least 2 years. Okay. And I kept that from him at his request. Okay. He thought he had at least 2 years. Just a week before his death, we were in Las Vegas at the world's largest car show, and he was walking around. He felt ill, got COVID on the way back, and passed away. He had never on his deathbed told Tim Foster, and I quote, that he wanted to give the county to the property. In fact, again, the contract of this land is not Gary's sole decision to do so. Joan Carmen was approached at the funeral home in the receiving line by Tim Foster speaking about the land, in which I was offended and grieving at the time of the loss of my husband. I never said to him anything regarding the fact that we would give the land to the county. That's just not true. The only thing that we ever agreed to was that if the land sale did not move forward, and we would continue to sell it for the dollar figure that I have in writing from my husband, Gary Carmen, during his illness and in his possession. Also, the township has meeting minutes that state the landowner requests and plan to remove all of the trees as their rights to do so. And this was due to the major part of the distress occurred by the petitioners. And as a human being and taxpayer for years, Gary Carmen felt discredited. Vecca landowners would appreciate that the township honor the private land sale as permitted in accordance with the zoning allowed, and please move forward swiftly on this issue with respect to all that has transpired over the past years. On behalf of Vecca Land Development owners and rights as a taxpayer for years, we would appreciate the township, who also has an obligation to Vecca Land Development that contracted, to please review the real facts at hand. We feel that the underlying issues are more than just the buffalo, the horse trails, and some of the issues of road expansion, which will be addressed surely and professionally, especially by the mere fact that our local residents still do have over 2,000 acres of county park, and so do the buffalo to run freely. These are our God-given rights as human beings and landowners. We are not asking for anything beyond what is ours, but what's ours to receive. And Gary dying, the wish was to retire and to complete the construction of his home, in which he was denied seeing in his untimely death. This land was purchased by Gary's father. Gary was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 19 years old. Gary worked side by side with his father, building most of the homes that was in Vecca Land Development that a lot of the people here live in. Sleepy Hollow was a part of Vecca Land Development, and they are now living in the homes that my husband and his father built. Okay. The father's intention for this land was to give it to his son because of his illness at the age of 19 years old until 43 with another body cancer, which unfortunately June 3rd of 2023, the treatment from this cancer caused fatal cancer in which my husband only lived 5 months. The full intention of this land was owned personally. It did not belong to South Park. It belonged to individuals for their families and for their families' future. I know you have concern for the buffalo, and we are also animal lovers. But we have concern for our husband, our grandchildren, our children, and their future also. This has caused us a lot of stress. And because of this, and because of the delays, my husband did not get to see what he wanted completed during his lifetime. And that is what he told me when I was the only one that knew that he was on his deathbed, that he wanted to be seen. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, last month, we heard a lot of comments, a lot of very good comments that educated myself and the other board members regarding some of the issues in the Sleepy Hollow area, AKA the Buffalo, the potential for water issues down there, concerns about geotechnical issues, lands development. So tonight we would like to focus on a couple of the items that were addressed with regards to the Allegheny County planning comments specific to the road work that is being done. And so we do have some people who have signed up, so we will go through some of these, but I would like you to, if you're going to comment about the Buffalo, that's fine, but please remember, we have heard about the Buffalo, we are aware of this, and, we're trying to come to a conclusion on this tonight, one way or the other. So, Tim, I know you're
I just,
on the top of the list here.
can I just voice the concern?
Please, why don't you
Get to the mic.
Why don't you step forward?
Well, Diane has the signature, so if she could go first. But I guess just my point is, I think we should also address anything that was said here. He incorrectly addressed many things about the Buffalo. So we're not gonna repeat anything, I promise you that. But I think that has to be addressed. And we have a minimum amount here that Diane is gonna address. So that's my only concern.
Well, why don't you step forward, Tim? Or Diane, whichever you would like. So, if you could state your name, please, and your address, just for the record.
Hi, my name is Diane Foster. I'm at 1046 Westchester Road. Good evening, everyone. I don't wish bad on anyone or anything, but there is no way that this is going to be a successful development. And you know how when one person tells you maybe something is not the right thing to do, and it's always kind of in the back of your mind when someone says that to you? Okay. I'll show you this. For the rest of your life, you're going to have to know that 13,000 people were trying to tell you not to do this. 13,000. Officially, this is the change.org. Officially, this is the change.org petition. Not just 100, or 300, or 1,000, or 5,000, or 10,000. This is 13,368 signatures.
All over the county.
Yes.
All from South Park.
You are here to represent the voice of the people, and the people have spoken on this petition. And please, please do the right thing. This will always be in the back of your mind. I'd like to share with you tonight a letter. Unfortunately, this voice was never really heard, and she unfairly paid the price that her and her family did not deserve. She shared this letter with you, the board, and with us, and we believe her voice should serve as a warning to all of us and to all of our township decision makers. This is the letter. It's an address to Dear South Park Township members. My name is Frances Hill. I've been asked by one of your township residents to reach out and explain the pain and suffering my family experienced from Frank Sokates, Leslie Road Associates, LLC, and Cloverdale Woods, LP. My family and I have lived on Wallace Road in Wexford for the past 10 years. And one of the main reasons for purchasing this home was the amazing pond and gorgeous landscaping the property had to offer. The pond was the place where much time with family and friends was spent. We took our many doxies down on a daily basis. We had a plethora of koi fish that had been named after family and friends over the years. These fish were like pets and meant a great deal to us. Significant time and money were spent on this area over the years. This all changed in the spring of 2019. Pine Township permitted Frank Sokates and one of his shell companies to clear cut the property adjacent to my home. Industrial timber was hired by him to remove the trees where Cloverdale Woods would be developed. Pine Township did not require Mr. Zocates to carry insurance. The township accepted the $1 million policy Zocates forced industrial timber to purchase. Zocates' property was completely clear-cut. Guidelines put forth by the DEP were continuously ignored and broken. The DEP did not shut down the site for all this, and we were told by the DEP they were simply too busy to keep up with all the development in the area. So notice of violations were sent out, but no one enforced them. And on October 31st, 2019, Mr. Zocates' disregard for rules and regulations became painfully apparent. Erosion measures laid forth by the DEP were not followed. Silt and water rushed from the Cloverdale Woods hillside into my pond and Brush Creek. The pond and surrounding areas were damaged. Numerous koi breached the pond and went into Brush Creek. Others suffered and died from all the silt that rushed into the water. The hillside remained completely cleared with no erosion in place for months. My husband would email the DEP and complain, and more notice of violations were issued but not enforced. Every time it rained, I would fear more water damage, or worse yet, a landslide. It remained this way until construction of homes were to begin. And finally, the retention pond was in place and grasses and trees were planted. Instead of fearing damage, we would be woken up by home builders who had no regard for rules and regulations. The township and local police were contacted by us. Nothing was done. The builders began work way before the allotted time by the township and continued way after hours, pounding echo through the valley for hours daily. Mr. Zocates never tried to right this wrong. He instead countersued and tried to bully his way out. 4 long years later, he did admit in court that erosion plans were not followed. He then pointed the finger at industrial timber, stating it was their fault. On November 27, 2023, the jury awarded us $1.25 million in compensatory damages and $5 million in punitive damages. More information can be found in the matter Googling the article Land Developers Hit with $5 million in punitive and $6.2 million in property damage case. Though required by law to be present in court, Mr. Zocates was absent on a daily basis. The day he was called to the stand, everyone in the courtroom had to wait 1.5 hours for him to arrive, yet again demonstrating his disregard for rules and regulations. The jury found Zocates 85% in industrial timber, 15% responsible for the punitive damages. Mr. Zocates flew his private jet back home to his residence in Florida. There he filed bankruptcy for his shell company, Leslie Rhodes, still attempting to avoid responsibility for his reckless actions. The owner of industrial timber is currently suing his insurance company. The insurance company claims they are not liable because the case was won based on trespassing. I truly hope you take what was stated under serious consideration before allowing Frank Zocates to develop in your township. He cuts corners, has no regard for laws and regulations put in place to protect our communities. He does not admit to his wrongdoing and will countersue those that he has wronged. It has been over 4 years and not a penny has been paid by the responsible parties for the damage of my property and the loss of our fish. Do better than Pine Township. Protect your community from this ruthless, dishonest developer. The jury made the proper decision. I implore you to do the same. Do not allow Frank Zocates to develop in your community. Signed sincerely, Francis Hill. And yes, we have issues with this developer in South Park.
Yes.
We have had flooding issues since 2021 with the Zocates Villas of South Park development. Yes, we have already experienced issues with this developer's team in South Park. Township officials and assembled professionals reported at the March 27th meeting that they had no issues with Zocates' previous development. That was the Villas of South Park. But now contrary evidence includes multiple resident testimonies before our Board of Supervisors outlining substantial damage due to water runoff and flooding that occurred when the land was cleared and continue to be present today. We have videos of the runoff and flooding. Damage was severe enough at times to reportedly require emergency rescue of trapped residents. Children's school bus stops were flooded. Why are we looking the other way on issues that have already impacted South Park residents? Why are we protecting this developer and not our own residents? Please. Our own.
Dan, is there any way you could pay attention? I know you got a lot going on.
Dan is paying
Can you pay attention to the meeting?
We're listening to every.
I don't have comments on development, that's not my job.
Our own hired township engineer, gateway engineers were actively assisting impacted residents according to news stories. But when this came up last meeting, Dan Desarov sat at your table in silence. Has he not been retained by the township to represent the people and be our eyes and ears? Why are you afraid to speak up about this? Based on what those residents continue to live with in our township silence, can you imagine what we will be dealing with regarding the complexities in Sleepy Hollow? Now, a subject that's near and dear to my heart, and I know you wanted me to keep it a little short on the buffalo. We've been doing our research with some of the most respected PhD credentialed professors of the American Bison Studies, as well as leading experts from some of the national buffalo groups. What it has made clear to us that buffalo, American bison, are extremely sensitive to stress, which can lead to reduced animal performance at best and animal death at worst. The buffalo's highly developed senses have enabled them to survive what looked like sure extinction. Their incredible auditory range enabled them to hear and pinpoint the sources of noises from miles away, and their ability to sense ground vibrations enabled them to detect and avoid predators, stampedes, and approaching storms. Unfortunately, these keen senses that these majestic buffalo possess lead to a very predictable level of stress when they're suddenly introduced to the noise and vibrations associated with nearby clearing, logging, construction, and development. Because these buffalo are extremely sensitive to stress, we were told that development will be 560 feet away. It will impact their overall health, their life expectancy, their ability to carry babies to term, their ability to deliver healthy offspring. Unfortunately, unlike in the wild, the South Park buffalo family, constrained by their fences, have nowhere to go to escape the noise and vibration, further heightening their stress and overall health. Last year, there was one baby buffalo that we named Baby Blue, and he was born to our South Park family. At only a few months old, he was accidentally stepped on by another buffalo, and he died. This devastating story was picked up by MSN, and it was also picked up around the world. If something happens to any of our buffalo in South Park, because we know how sensitive they are to vibrations and the sound, and this proposed development is only 560 feet away from their enclosure, you will be forever known as the board that allowed this to happen.
That's right.
Do you want to know? Do you want to be known as the board that allowed this to be passed, or be known as the board who tried to follow in the footsteps of Edward Babcock, who was the father of our county parks? Our buffalo family have lived here peacefully and are dependent on us for help. Their conservation effort brought them here in 1927. Now it's our generation and our duty not to fail them. Thank you for your time.
Tim Foster, 1046 Westchester. I just wanted to share this with you. I don't know what that 3 mile thing was, but this controversy with the buffalo started with the WTAE and a WPXI interview that I did, saying that they were the closest development to the buffalo was about 560 feet. Frank Zocates, as the reporter stated, said it was 1,600 feet. I don't know if he doesn't know where the buffalo are, but I just wanted to present this to you guys. This is Google Earth. I mean, pretty accurate. You can see that they are 500 feet away from the closest development. 1,600 feet gets you all the way almost to Corrigan Drive. So I don't understand that, but that's what the accurate numbers are. Thank you. So I think it was very telling last week, Pat, when you said it's going to be very interesting to see the report from Matt Trapol from the Allegheny County Economic Development Group. And Pat, you said you had no idea how it could differ from the gathered group of professionals that they already heard from, that you already heard from, that had said they had no issues with the report. Here's the huge difference, guys. The Allegheny County Economic Development Group is an independent group that has no chips in the game here. What we learned more and more about, and you as a board have to really start to question and scrutinize the input and the advice that this well-rehearsed group of professionals offer you. Like in any court, judge the independence and motives of the witnesses and the reports that are given. If they lack credibility and objectivity, you should not rely on those for your decisions. It's well documented that this is an assembled group that travels from town to town doing the same process over and over. If you research these developments, it's the same group of professionals. And so these separate companies are always working together to get that information that they need. And if they don't give that information, you can absolutely be sure that they're going to be dropped off at the next rest stop outside of town. Joshua Haydu from Wooster & Associates, who's not here tonight, his report was amazingly insulting. He came up to the board and actually said his study indicated that the building of 108 homes on what is now a dirt and gravel road in very poor condition was favorable. And it sure seemed like that's all he was going to say. It was not until you as a board started asking specific questions about the number of trips that he started to give a few answers. And I hope you guys will remember that. When he was giving the answers, you guys as a board had to correct his numbers. He was saying 75, you said it was 77. He said it was 107, you said it was 103. But the most incredible part of his analysis was not even shared with you last month, so let me do that now. Joshua's report to you actually states that the impact of the Sleepy Hollow and Stoltz intersection will be minimal, with 108 houses as their only way in and only way out. And no improvements to the bridge are necessary. We're already backtracking on that. How do you trust these professionals that stand here and tell you that nothing is going to be needed to be done to an 18-foot wide bridge? It's great to say when you have no responsibility and no liability for that. And incredibly, at Sleepy Hollow Road itself, the report talks about access roads being built off with two going up the development and 2 driveways going to the south. And the report actually says, and I quote, "No additional roadway improvements are required or necessary." All we can say is, have you really ever been there? If so, where is the credibility or believability of this professional who's not even here tonight? Now, I'm absolutely sure of 2 things. With the Go Along gang work, Josh is, I'm sure, going to be a part of their next process with answers like that. And I'm sure his next report is going to look very similar to the one he gave to you. And also recall, Josh was completely unaware of a major school development that was happening not too far away that was certainly going to have an impact on all of the traffic situation, but he was completely unaware of it. How do you trust anything that you're getting from these professionals? The second thing I'm sure of is any township commissioner board is going to be viewed as negligence if they're accepting this type of work and they're making a decision on it. And we know about the liability issues here, and I'm going to get into that. So let's contrast that with the type of work that a truly independent review by the Allegheny County Economic Development Group. And this is clearly the most strongly worded advisory letter that any well-experienced individual that I talked to in this area and has ever seen. You usually get, you may want to consider type of language. This language is completely different. And incredibly, the plans themselves, as submitted to the county, are not up to professional standards. This is from Matt. And we're not doing our job here. The surveyor should be advised to review appendices 1 through 4 of the county subdivision and land development ordinance, the county salvo, regarding the rules and regulations affecting the preparation and subdivision record plans, as well as the ACDRE drafting standards. Based on this comment, these plans should not been accepted by South Park Township as they are incomplete and do not meet SALDO standards. The clock starts running officially when they are accepted. Since the clock started running, the Plan Commission should deny these plans as incomplete. I had also checked with the surveyor that was Amy Hopkins. Based on her stellar reputation of everyone I talked to in the industry, I was surprised to see the backlash from the ACED about the lack of professional standards that were followed to submit their application. I reached out to Amy and she was surprised by the ACD, the Allegheny County Economic Development Group's language that I read to her. But she quickly distanced herself from this group and said that she only prepares the boundary and topography information, and apparently she'll be brought back after this team show here is over and approved. Now, the ACD advisory letter points out major concerns with proposed road width, lane width, and the fact that it states that the road is slated to be repaved by the developer and need major excavation. This is mass language from the Allegheny County Economic Development Group. All I heard tonight was about repaving. Now, it's your job to ensure that we confirm that Sleepy Hollow Road is built to municipal standards based on the current condition of the road. The developer should be made to bring the road up to current standards. The developer should, at a minimum, do core bearings to see if the road has a base or not. The increased traffic will destroy the road if it's not built to municipal standards, and the cost of South Park for money and repairs and liability claims for years to come. The ACED letter also had major concerns about the bridge. Match Group states that it is narrow and does not meet the township minimum right-of-way standards and is the sole access point, and any damage to the Sleepy Hollow Bridge or blockage of Sleepy Hollow Road west of the development renders the site inaccessible to emergency vehicles. Please note this warning language that will be repeated over and over again in the future by litigators. This is what you're being told. I heard no answers to that, because really there are no answers to that. I spoke with Steve Wilharm, who's the director of the Allegheny County Economic Development Response Team. Fortunately, he lives in Bethel Park and his son lives in South Park, so he has some familiarity with the area. He told me that for necessary emergency response access, because people's lives are on the line, most towns have a requirement for 2 access points onto 2 independent roads for developments over 40 homes, or at least have a gated emergency access point onto another roadway that the emergency access vehicles alone can access, neither of which is planned for or even possible here. Steve confided that this would be a disaster waiting to happen. Again, this is all a part of the record. This is stuff that litigators are going to love to find. So let's recall something absolutely critical that I talked about last week. The township has a very specific elevated duty to protect residents and visitors from known and foreseeable defects and issues with roads, sidewalks, and bridges. And that leaves us as a township wide open for major litigation costs, settlements, and jury awards for any injuries or death related to the accidents or blockage associated with township roads and sidewalks like Sleepy Hollow Road. There is no sovereign immunity protection for sidewalks, roads, or bridges. So this developer may not by definition be asking for a variance, but what they're asking you to do is ignore major issues with Sleepy Hollow Road and Bridge, where the township has a huge risk of liability, not the developer. Our township should not be forced into accepting this risk to get a development done. We should also not be forced into spending millions of dollars to properly bring the road up to standards and spend millions of dollars for a new bridge. I know that the county paid 2 years ago for that bridge on the other side, which is only 18 feet wide, $1.7 million. For this reason, you have ample grounds not to recommend this development to the Board of Supervisors. And this may not technically be asking for a variance, but the developer's team is asking you to turn a blind eye on matters that cannot be ignored without major implications. Please, let's just think about how easy we're making this for future litigators and how happy they will be representing the family who lost a loved one who died in one of the homes where the Majestic Woods used to be, and because of an accident on the narrow Bridger Road, the litigators will find repeated warnings to the board by concerned residents and independent groups like the Allegheny County Economic Development Group that were ignored as a part of this done deal. Now, development development pushed forward despite numerous red flag warnings, and that they will be used against the township as contributory negligence and mismanagement. What a strong case they will have for the judge and jury. Will this board really opt to chase the nickels and dimes for the illusion of more school tax revenue while throwing millions of dollars away, constructing a bridge, or in huge litigation costs and awards? Now, another aspect which I'm not sure that you're aware of, that is just absolutely hard to believe. Are you aware that there have been 5 water main breaks on Sleepy Hollow Road in the last number of months? 5. Can you give the... We had an eagle-eye view, and every time we see the yellow lights down there, it signals another repair. Now, the most recent break happened on Sunday when I was walking down there with the film crew, and it was the timing couldn't be better. We started seeing some bubbling water coming up from the road. The road, you could feel the vibration, and so we called the police. The police called the water company. The water company basically came out and said, please stay off the road because it can collapse. And it was moving on the side. So this repaving of this road, this is ridiculous. Can you give them the 5 separate pictures of the breaks? So on Monday, I walked down to where the repair was happening and fortunately caught the guys on a break. I talked to them about the 5 breaks all happening close together, and the man who was still sitting on the backhoe told me he was a former coal miner, and he strongly believed that what we were seeing is evidence of subsidence. He said that the influx of the water from the breaks, coupled with the surface activity, please tell me that sounds familiar to what I was talking about last week, just keeps making the situation worse. That sounded like the exact warning that I presented at the meeting last time. So mine subsidence on Sleepy Hollow Road will continue to be a major issue that will not go away ever. And please remember also, it's well settled under PA law, and I hear no discussion of it, but there must be an accommodation for the horses that have used that road for 100 years under the pre-existing non-conforming requirements. There must be a trail on the road and the bridge. If not, this will be an error that will be corrected under the acre law with the Pennsylvania Attorney General. This is the perfect claim as I reviewed them, that there's either an ordinance that takes something away or there's a development that takes something away. So why that's not being addressed, I talked about it last time, this is something that needs to be addressed. Now how wide that horse trail has to be, I don't know. That's what the horse people are here so they can talk to you. So just in closing, please not let this developer bully you into thinking you have no other option for this development. The township has an unfair burden of excess risk of litigation due to the inherent problems associated with Sleepy Hollow Road and Bridge. This is a unique property and has very unique issues and problems. We ask you to do what's in the best interest for the township and do the will of the people. Thank you for your time. With the land trust, with Andy Beckley. So I have the notes for those meetings, and I just wanted to share those with you, and I've signed them. And I'm not going to get into a dispute with Joan, but what she said was unfair. I have 3 witnesses here that heard that. I'm not trying to get on the wrong side of her. I don't want to cause her issues with the development, so I'm just going to let that go. But I'm going to give this to you just for your information. Thank you.
Jason Sobek.
My name's Jason Sobek, 1750 Stolz Road. Before I get started, I did print out the South Park Township street design standards from the subdivision and land development ordinances. I would like to give those to you for the record. So to start, the developer's transportation impact study states that no additional roadway improvements are required or recommended on Sleepy Hollow Road. How is that possible? it's already been established that the traffic study did not account for the New Bethel Park Elementary Center on King School. And I just handed you South Park Township's street design standards from the subdivision and land development ordinances. Those standards state a 24-foot cartway paving width for local streets, 50-foot right-of-way width, 60 to 90 degree angle of street intersection, 4-foot sidewalk width, 2-foot curb depth. The developer initially proposed 20 feet cartway paving width. Now he's proposing 22. Does not meet the standards, and if there are no sidewalks and that bridge is not brought up to 24-foot cartway paving width, with a sidewalk on it for safe passage, it creates major safety issues. There are currently 4 occupied homes on Sleepy Hollow Road. The developer proposes adding an additional 108 homes and proposes widening Sleepy Hollow Road to only a 22-foot cartway paving width along the proposed development was initially, but now apparently all the way to Stoltz. Even so, insufficient, does not meet township standards is a reason for you not to recommend this. There is no mention of widening the road or the bridge to comply with the SALDO, addressing the width, the right-of-way, line of sight, or other issues. There is no plan to create sidewalks or horse trails from Sleepy Hollow Road all the way to Stoltz, across the bridge, creating a needed safe passage, across the bridge and down the road for vehicles, pedestrians, and equestrians. In addition to non-compliance with the township SALDO, the inadequate road and bridge present a serious safety risk. Last year, Jim Con versus Home caught fire. In 2018, the bridge and intersection at Stoltz and Sleepy Hollow Roads flooded, and the road was impassable. Flooding is likely to happen again, especially when the area is stripped of vegetation. This presents a major risk for emergency vehicles accessing the site. There may be other roads in the township that do not meet standards. However, they are not roads or bridges where a developer is proposing a major subdivision consisting of 108 homes where the unsafe road and bridge are the only way in and the only way out. I do not see how this board can recommend a major subdivision including 108 homes where a single road and bridge will be the only way in and only way out. This is unsafe and far from complying with township standards. That has not been addressed. South Park Township's comprehensive plan and Allegheny County's future land use plan. South Park Township's comprehensive plan shows a portion of the subject property as South Park Green Space Network. This includes the northern side of Sleepy Hollow Road and a significant portion of the southern side. South Park Township Ordinance 712 of 2023, amending Ordinance 556, states Allegheny County's future land use map illustrates conservation as a recommended direction for land use patterns throughout the township's areas designated as R1 and R2 districts. This indicates approving this major subdivision plan would not comply with Allegheny County's future land use plan. I took that language straight from that ordinance. The future land use plan defines conservation as areas where the resources are protected and development is discouraged. Conservation areas include sensitive environmental features, scenic landscapes, and cultural resources. Wetlands. The Palistris Regulated Waters Report identified a wetland on the property. The developer's solution is to designate the wetland as open space, but plans to clear cut and fill all of the land surrounding the wetland. This will not protect the wetland, it will dry up. As far as the geotech report, there were a lot of interesting facts in there, and a lot of those interesting facts were pointed out in the Gateway Engineers letter. I'm surprised Dan didn't mention any of those issues tonight. Some of the things from that geotech report, there are no CVs of the principals who signed the geotech report providing their relevant experience. Professional engineers are only permitted to stamp reports and drawings in fields in which they are proficient. Additionally, there are societies and specific registrations for geotech engineers and experts. Expertise is not readily evident in this document, and it would be beneficial to determine the qualifications of those who put together this report. Substantial cut and fill are required for this proposal. Clear cutting and removing of all vegetation during the process creates an unsightly and dangerous conditions for those living downslope and downstream as the risk of flooding becomes more pronounced. This is evidenced in the drawings attached to the geotech report showing cut and fill diagrams. A letter from Shelley Hill in Wexford is relevant to clear cutting on the steep slope terrain, and the resulting litigation due to lack of control or care by this developer further evidences this concern. The Pittsburgh coal seam is mined throughout the areas and specifically occurs below the surface, ranging in a depth of 50 feet to 290 feet. Routing and filling of underground mine voids must be completed within a 100-foot radius of structures. There are risks associated with grouting, and ACA, the engineering firm that the developer hired to do this report, recommends they should oversee grouting operations. Oversight should be provided by a neutral third party, not a firm selected by the developer. No specific reference was defined to determine the relationship of the mine void height versus the lateral support of the surface. The Pittsburgh coal seam mine void in test hole P28 shows a void of nearly 8 feet. Collapse within a mine void will affect the surface based on the height of the voids and should not be reflective of a typical lateral support based on general documentation. A specific calculation to determine the lateral support at the surface should be required based on the height of the void. This is not contained within the report. The geotech report also states the Redstone, Wayne, and Waynesburg coal seams outcrop within the property. According to section 6.1.1, site preparation, all organic materials, including coal within the construction zone, must be removed. Removal of coal from the site may require DEP approvals in addition to the NPDES permits that were mentioned and should have been noted in greater detail. The township should be aware of any additional requirement when coal seams and removal of coal is encountered. Removals required based on the geotech report for the safety of the foundation of the homes. Again, section 6.1.1 states, strip the entire proposed construction area of coal and carbonaceous material, among other things. If they are removing coal as suggested, it seems to me that a DEP mining permit may be required depending on exactly what they encounter. Expansive pyrites must be identified and removed per section 6.2.9 general fill construction. It should be noted that pyrite found in the drilling program is iron sulfides that contaminates waterways, are acidic in nature, and create the reddish rust color that we see in polluted streams from time to time. This occurs when exposed air and oxidation process and presents yet another risk. Acid drainage occurs naturally within some environments as part of the rock weathering process, but is exacerbated by large-scale earth disturbances characteristic of mining and other construction activities, usually within the rocks containing an abundance of sulfide minerals. Areas where the earth has been disturbed, such as construction sites, may create acid drainage. This liquid often contains highly toxic metals, such as copper or iron. These, combined with reduced pH, have a detrimental impact on streams, aquatic environments, and pose a risk to Sleepy Hollow Run and downstream waterways, including Piney Fork and Peters Creek. I know they stock trout in one of those areas. No one to date that I'm aware of has spoken to the effects of subsurface water flow and the potential of acid drainage when in contact with pyritic conditions. The geotech report states groundwater was encountered in several holes per section 2.3 groundwater readings. Groundwater intrusion combined with the exposure of pyrite can cause major contamination. Again, the Hill case demonstrates this risk is real, and that's happened with this developer. Based on the findings in the geotech report, a hydrologic study should be completed and a plan should be in place to define how contaminated groundwater will be mitigated. This is a highly complex report, and in order to satisfy the recommendations for safety of proposed dwellings, as well as the adjacent properties and downstream residents, is the township going to be responsible for reviewing each step and verifying adherence to ensure the recommendations contained in the geotech report are completed? The Gateway Engineers recommendation stated that ACA provide full-time construction phase geotechnical inspections. ACA does not represent the township's interest. ACA represents the developer's interests. If this is approved, an independent engineer with no prior affiliation to the developer should be employed at a cost of the developer, and oversight should be conducted by the township given the serious risks associated with developing this specific parcel. The township engineers have the expertise to review each step and the tests needed to ensure compliance, and what expense will the township incur and pass on to taxpayers. On to school taxes, because it was mentioned last time. I think I'm the one that brought it up. So I did some math. The plan contains 108 new home sites. Based on the previous meeting, it is anticipated that each new home will pay approximately $5,000 in annual school taxes. This equates to a potential revenue of $540,000 per year. New homes are most typically sold to younger families, and an average 61.5% of those households have school-age children. Per the National Association of Home Builders, assuming only one school-age child per household, that equates to 66.5 students. The average cost per student, based on a variety of sources, averages $14,000 per student, for a total cost to the township, the school board, of $931,000 a year. A net loss to the township of $391,000 a year.
That's not wrong.
Jason, you better get your numbers together when you start quoting numbers, because I'm gonna contest them. Those are not accurate.
Okay, well,
I'm telling you, you're eligible. I respect your perspective, but you gotta have your facts right. Those are not right.
What's You know the facts, tell us.
I do know.
Tell us.
If you listen, I'll tell you. 40% of the, almost 40% of the property in South Park is tax exempt property.
No.
Yes, it is.
How much per kid to educate
Then
a
you know
kid?
what, then go ahead and think what you want to think. I won't explain it.
Pat, can you explain those numbers?
You said you had 2,000
I have a question, simple question. This piece of paper that you gave us, where exactly did you get this? What is this from?
That is from the South Park, the subdivision of land development ordinance.
How did you borrow that? Was that online? Did you come up here and call?
It was a right to know request.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, because you don't have your
Yeah,
codes online.
I wish our ordinances were online.
There's not-
Unfortunately, we have to submit right to know requests to review our own
Did
ordinance.
you got this off of the contract? Thank you.
Yeah, just for clarification, the Parkway Lane is the Lakeshore Lanes. The other 3 feet to make.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Come on.
Make up the total of 24 feet of paved road is by putting this curb.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay, can you step up?
These guys deserve an answer.
That's not true, Dan. Dan, you need to get your facts
Thank you,
straight.
that's what my discrepancy is. That's where I'm getting this from. I know, yes, thank you.
Can he please repeat that answer on the microphone? I mean,
You tell us what he said. It's wrong, even the county pointed out.
I had a question about the width. That's why I was asking about the roadways in particular definition of the cartway. If you could explain that in detail to me, what that definition is.
So the cartway is the actual traveled lane of the road. That's where the vehicles travel. A typical lane is 11 foot wide on a local road. In our detail, it shows two 11-foot lanes, and it shows an 18-inch curb on either side. So that's a total of 24 feet. So the actual cartway with the travel without curbs is 22 feet. So that's what's being proposed by the developer. Through the area of the development where the developer owns property on both sides of the road, they're proposing it to build it exactly in accordance with that standard. I just want to clarify, that's all. Does that make sense?
No, I'm sorry.
No, it
Because you're
doesn't.
wrong.
So you, please, I'm sorry, Dan, I don't want to be a problem.
That's all right.
What Jason gave me here, okay, this says 24-foot wide, partway paving width, 24 foot,
Well,
local streets.
Two
You just said
12-foot lanes.
22 foot.
It says two
So
12-foot
it's
It's two 11-foot lanes, and then there's a curb.
Okay, this says partway paving width.
I don't have the detail in front.
That, I'm telling you. And in addition, obviously the county read the saldo as well, because the county letter states 12 foot.
That's right, it says 12 foot in the county letter.
He's supposed to be on our side.
Yeah.
We pay him to be on our side.
Yeah.
I'm not on anybody's side, I'm just stating what the facts are. And the facts are that the township standards detail, which we don't have in front of us, that's a written form, is what controls on the project. The details are shown on the plan, I assure that the details are on the plan.
Dan,
So Dan must be saying the county got it wrong as well, because the ACED letter clearly says 12 foot, so the county knows how to read our saldo. But the county letter says 12 foot length.
You fellas have the county letter there? Page 2.
Okay.
It's on page 2.
Okay.
I read it.
Yep.
All highlighted.
Yeah. All good. I'm sorry if that sounded smart. It wasn't supposed to.
Okay, Tom Priano.
My name is Thomas Priano. I live at 1020 Old Post Road. And last time everybody else except for me went up to the thing and showed where they live. I live here.
All right, Tom.
At last month's meeting, I expressed concerns about the reputation of the developer making this request. We were told that the township has had experience with this developer in the past, and that the experience had been positive. Mr. Bonity stated that there were no issues, no problems, no mishaps, no complaints. That is a direct quote. With all due respect, I must say that is not completely the case. The minutes from the July 12, 2021 Board of Supervisors meeting recount a resident from Snowden Road commenting about water runoff from the Villas development site. Mr. Dieseroth stated that a representative from Gateway Engineers reviewed the water situation and had the contractor make some adjustments. Mr. Dieseroth also remarked that the site was in a temporary construction phase, and once the stormwater system is in place, everything will stay on the site and not run into that resident's yard. The issues with the contractor were reportedly addressed, and the resident was told at the meeting that that water from the site should no longer be an issue. The resident replied that the water flooded there again a few days before the meeting. So to say there were no issues, problems, mishaps, or complaints sounds like it is not a completely accurate statement. This report, coupled with the recent court case that we heard the letter from the homeowner, from Wexford, whose property was flooded due to outrageous negligence by the developer, leads me to believe that this developer apparently has a habit of not handling water well. I am thankful that my property is situated higher than the Sleepy Hollow property, but I cannot imagine the anxiety that Bonnie Gildea is facing since her farm is situated below the Sleepy Hollow property. Water runoff during the construction phase is a severe concern for her, especially given the fact that this developer seems incapable of properly handling water runoff. In my mind, it begs the question, how many floods are acceptable in terms of safety? Are 1 or 2 floods deemed acceptable by our township leaders? Perhaps 0 floods would be more agreeable, especially to the parties whose lives and livelihoods lay in the path of potential flooding. I believe it is irresponsible for the township leadership to permit this developer, who on several occasions has been found to be negligent and exercise disregard for rules and regulations, to do further work within our township. I'm glad that you folks think that your experience with this developer has been positive. Even if that were completely the case, given his track record in other areas of the Pittsburgh region, I must wonder out loud if South Park got lucky, or if this developer's corner-cutting ways have just not yet been manifested. There's a different development in North Strabane, ironically, another Majestic. That development is called Majestic Hills. And please, I want to make it extremely clear, the developer of Majestic Hills is not the same developer that we are speaking about tonight. This is not the same developer, but the moral of the story is relevant. Majestic Hills, from what I can tell, appears to have been developed in the mid-2000s, with many of the houses being constructed in 2006 or 2007. In June of 2018, the hillside quickly began to give way. The landslide caused extensive damage to the point that 3 homes had to be torn down and 1 home is inaccessible. The developer was deemed to bear the responsibility, even though it had been 12 years or more since his work had been completed. People lost their homes years after this developer finished his work. My hillside slopes down to the property line shared with this Sleepy Hollow property in question this evening. Stories of a tragedy like Majestic Hills are terrifying, especially considering the court-proven negligence and disregard for the rules and regulations set in place to protect homeowners like me and my neighbors. Mr. Dieseroth stated at the last meeting about rules and regulations to make sure that other people's property is safeguarded. What happens if the rules and regulations aren't followed? What happens if the developer cuts corners in ways that cause catastrophic damage to other people's properties? And I know you're going to say that we have an engineer and a code enforcement officer in place to make sure those rules and regulations are followed. But again, just like last month, I am certain that Pine Township had an engineer and code enforcement officer, and I'm sure that North Trevane Township had the same. Yet somehow, developers have found a way around those people put in place to protect us, and tragic events have occurred. Even here in South Park. Water has been mishandled by this developer. I hope you can understand why those of us who share borders with this property are so gravely concerned. I wish we could put you folks in our places so you could experience firsthand the developers working in your backyard. The other item, and I know a lot of this has sort of been gone over, is this bridge. That brings me back to the question, Adrian, you had asked about 12 foot. Is it 12 foot or is it 11 foot? I drive a Chevy Silverado. The width of my truck is 81.24 inches wide. My wife drives a Suburban. The width of her vehicle is 80.5 inches. My garage is just over 20 feet wide. It is a tight squeeze putting the Suburban and the Silverado in the garage together, and that's at 20 feet. I measured the bridge Monday evening, and the widest I could find was 19 feet at the guardrail. That seems exceptionally narrow, and I understand that the proposal is now to widen it to 22 feet. That's still pretty narrow, especially considering you have a guardrail. What do people do when they get up against the guardrail? They move to the side. So they're moving over into the other lane, into the opposing traffic. As I pulled away Monday evening, I experienced yet again how narrow that opening is to Stoltz Road. There's a telephone pole right at the corner. You have to swing wide. If you're making a right from Stoltz onto Sleepy Hollow, you have to swing wide to avoid the telephone pole. As I was driving to work this morning, there was a small dump truck on the bridge approaching the stop sign. There's no way I could have turned onto that road. No way. Sorry, I got off script. All right, there's not enough room.
It's okay.
All right. I can see the situation already. A driver slows down to make the right-hand turn onto Sleepy Hollow Road from Stoltz Road when they see another vehicle traversing the bridge towards Stoltz Road. The first driver slams on their brakes because they can no longer make that turn. The driver behind them slams on his brakes to react. The driver behind him doesn't react fast enough and rear-ends the middle vehicle. The same can be true from the Marapat side of Stoltz, where you add the complexity and distraction of oncoming traffic to the narrowness of the bridge. It does not seem reasonable to build 108 additional homes off of Sleepy Hollow Road and not widen the only access point into or out of that area, and not widen more than 22 feet. This isn't even taking consideration the fact that wider vehicles than my Silverado are going to be traveling that bridge, from school buses to delivery trucks to emergency vehicles. The bridge is not suitable for what this development is requesting to add to this neighborhood. I could go on and on with other items. Other people have talked about other things, and I'm sure other people are going to talk about more. In summary, I believe the many risks this development presents, including the negligent developer and narrow bridge, far outweigh any possible benefits that can come from building 108 homes here. The amount of tax revenue would pale in comparison to the risks, as well as the increased burden on the township and its resources. For the safety of the adjacent property owners, like myself and my neighbors, the neighborhood this property is in, as well as the township as a whole, I believe it is only reasonable to not recommend approval of this proposed development. Again, I thank you for your time and attention and request that you not recommend
Jim Converse.
Are you going in order of the names on that list, or are you just jumping around? Are you going in order that the people signed it? You're jumping around. Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Jim, jump.
Yeah, I'd like to. I just want to, yeah, because I was like third on the list. Park, you don't want to hear what I have to say. My name's Jim Jenkins. I live 5658 King School Road in Bethel Park, right off of, everybody knows where King School is. Just a couple points. It's as clear as can be in the county's letter that it calls for 12-foot lanes for the roads in South Park Township. I don't know why the engineer from Gateway interprets it to be 11. It also states that that's a 35-foot right-of-way on Sleepy Hollow Road currently. The township code through Saldo calls for 50-foot right-of-ways now, but that's an existing thing at 35. At 35, there still should be enough room to make that road wider than 11 feet lanes. 12-foot lanes like the code calls for, rebuild the whole thing if you're going to do this crazy plan with curbs and so forth. My second question to the township, your codes are very difficult, if not impossible to find. You don't have anything online, which is kind of like here in the old days. You have to do right to know and request to get copies of things.
Let me interrupt you a second. That's a great point to bring up. I wish everything was online. Good point for supervisors. Planning Commission doesn't have any authority to say, put stuff online.
I understand completely.
So, but when you say stuff like that, I don't like the group that think, hey, why aren't they putting their stuff online? Go to the supervisor meeting and request that they do that.
Well, I will come to your next supervisor's meeting and I'll stand up and suggest that to them. Their supervisor, this supervisor. Oh, Mark, you made a good point there. I understand completely.
We are holding back from putting anything online.
Right. We'll skip over that. You have to do an information request to get information in South Park. We'll leave it at that. My second point is, the developer wants to put in 108 houses, which is basically a big cul-de-sac off of Stoltz Road. It's not really a cul-de-sac up off of Sleepy Hollow because the pinch point is at Stoltz Road and Sleepy Hollow. Do you have an ordinance in South Park on how long a cul-de-sac can be and how many houses can be on a cul-de-sac? That's a question. I'm going to try to find that information out. Mr. Boniti, do you know that?
I do not know that. I would. 1,000 feet on cul-de-sacs, no number of homes.
1,000 feet on a cul-de-sac. Mr. Engineer, how long are those roads?
All the roads meet the length requirement for cul-de-sacs.
You didn't answer the question. That's not an answer. Well, okay, so from Stoltz, you're saying it's only 1,000 feet to the end of whatever that is?
That's not how the ordinance reads. It meets the requirements of the road design.
Okay. Okay, so, well, it's just a question I had. I was curious about that. All the other comments I wanted to make have been pretty much covered by other people. The county's letter was very clear about the road width, in spite of what the gentleman from Gateway says. It says 12 feet lanes. Also, the letter from Gateway, that's 6 pages long, they made a multiple number of different suggestions and questions about different things. Coal, pyrite, and also your traffic engineer, where is he? He's not here tonight. He said last week it was either 70 or 77 trips in the morning. However, what wasn't said is that his report says that that plan will probably generate over 1,000 trips per day into that plan. You got to do something with that bridge if you're going to let them do this crazy thing. I don't know how you take a bridge that's built on 2 steel culverts with concrete. I don't know how you widen it wider unless you put in longer culverts. somebody said earlier that they could just change the walls and so forth. I find that hard to believe, but that's all I have to say tonight. I thank you for your time.
We'll try again, Mr. Tucker.
Thank you for deferring, Mr. Tucker.
Yeah, as you all know, I'm Jim Ponderso, with the corner of City Hall Road. We had a fire, and my neighbors along with that here. But asked me to talk about the home and my neighbors will ask me to talk about how hard it was to for the firemen to get in because of that telephone pole at the corner. It's just, it's bad. They have to swim way out and come back in. In fact, the Brighton Fire Department got there first before the library fire department did with their truck. And when the library fire department has come for problems down at Camp Sleepy Hollow, they have to swim way out and come back in to make the turn. And so something needs to be done with this bridge. It's not just the width of it, it's so how it sits and the adjoining the telephone pole. Like if you look at my guardrail, I don't know how many times the township has fixed it, and they turn around and then a few days later it's smashed over the guardrails. When people look at them, they're always smashed. You know, it's a bad situation. And then the other thing too is, we the other day told them, let us look at the plans, and I was a little concerned about looking at the best management plan. There was no index contours on the plans, so we don't know how the land's going this way or going this way, because there's just lines. So it's a little hard to for somebody to figure out what they're doing, you know. And the other thing was, they're running a high pressure gas line down a public street. And I know you can negotiate with the gas company to do that, but it's pretty difficult to do. Especially when by losing one lot, you can come up with an alternative location. Okay? I'm just trying to keep it as short as I can, because I know you guys are getting tired. Thank you.
Julia Gunn.
Good evening. I'm a business owner in South Park, and my property is right here. So I'm at the very end of the Sleepy Hollow. So my farm is over here. And also, I have a ventilation shaft, a mine shaft on my property. It's called the gun shaft. And I just had to call the Bureau of Mines and ask them to come and fill it again, because the last two rains, it went down about 2 to 3 inches. So that, I think, is evidence of what can happen in that area, because I see it on my property every day. The water just runs right across the street and heads for that ventilation shaft. And if there's too much water, which we saw in 2018, when it comes across my road, the sewer line is in Sleepy Hollow Run. So in 2018, the water came down, blew off the lid behind my property of that sewer line, ran down Sleepy Hollow, and that's when you got the explosion that you had to build the new road down there. So stormwater is a huge issue. So I would like to ask you, for safety reasons, to deny the request for this development. One thing nobody has brought up is, what is PennDOT going to do about Stoltz Road? Because you've got this bridge here, and then right here you have this bridge. So it's not that they can widen the bridge, and it doesn't affect the other bridge. There's another culvert there. So I've talked to PennDOT, I've talked to Mike Simmons, I've got PennDOT on speed dial. No one has filled a highway occupancy permit, okay? Bethel Park School has not filed a highway occupancy permit. Well, the plan probably wouldn't have filed it yet. But there's no plans to do anything to Stoltz Road. So all this traffic, and if you drive on King School and see what the traffic has done to King School right now, that's what's going to happen to Stoltz Road. So who is going to repair Stoltz Road then? Okay, and if you go to the bridge this here in front of my barn. The bridge is fine, I mean, it looks okay, it's decaying on the sides, but what is happening is it's cracking before the bridge and after the bridge. So the pavement is all cracking on both sides because the last rainstorm, that water went way over the bridge. And with the whole, in the parking lot, down in South Park, did everybody see the picture of the subsidence? I mean, but this is real, this isn't something we're making up, it's really happening. So the safety for our current residents, I think, is an issue here. I own 10 acres over there, and I'll be in the same position in the Carmen someday that I'll want to sell it. But, the reason this property has never been developed are because of these issues. It's because it's not a good piece of property to build. And then the other question I had was about timbering. Are they timbering? Are they burning? Are they hauling away? I mean, what are the specifics of what they're doing with all that wood? Okay? Can one of those long timber trucks make that turn? Okay. Can a school bus make that turn? No. So they're going to have to file an application to build a new bridge with the DEP. I mean, there are so many things that are going to happen before you can even do anything back there. My biggest concern is, do we know the financial stability of the builder? He has all these judgments against him for $5 million, $1.2 million. Is he coming to this property with enough money if something goes wrong? Let's say he clear cuts the land. Oh, there's a mine subsidence. Oh, there's a lot of work to do here. Oh, I don't have any money to do it. Does he just walk away? And then we're left with a pile of mud. So I hope you vote today, and what you vote today will either unite this community or divide it. Because never in my days have I seen this many people turn up for something that they feel is so important for us, for our children, and for our grandchildren. Thank you for your time.
Hi, Bonnie Gilday, 1971 Sleepy Hollow Road. I can stand up here and once again tell you how devastating this development will be to my family, my horses, and my home. But I would hope by now you realize this. Has anyone on this board or gateway engineer reviewed the housing plans of the 108 homes in relationship to where I live? Do you realize this housing development will be built above my home? My whole property sits below this major development. This development will drastically alter how the ground above me will absorb water from rain, snow, etc. Once the trees, brush, grasses that currently absorb the groundwater are replaced by cement, the resulting drainage and runoff is ultimately going to lead to flooding. It's not if I'm going to be flooded, it's when, before, during, or after the construction. Has anyone reviewed the submitted plans for Majestic Woods? I'm not in a position to understand what all this means, but every area of this development seems to have issues and does not seem like an ideal place to be building homes. The geotechnical investigation on page 8, 6.1, site preparation states the following. Based on the test borings performed and the standard penetration testing results, the natural soil encountered in most of the test boring is not suitable to support the proposed building foundation, slabs, and pavements due to the soft nature of the material. Yet here we are in the approval stages of this development. This report goes on to state that there is a medium risk to mine subsidence. The site is slightly to steeply sloped and frequently flooding. It only states the soft areas should be stabilized. It is recommended that during site preparation, an ACA engineer representative should evaluate the suitable materials being used. Backfill should be filled with suitable materials. All areas should be proof-ruled. All areas that are proof-ruled should be inspected by an engineer. Prepared field should be compacted to a minimum density of 95%. The contractor should maintain good site drainage. Water should be drained, mud zones and softened soils should be recompacted. In this whole plan, nowhere does it state the developer has to do this. Should and recommended is what I am reading, and I can tell you, based on this developer has to do things, should and recommended is not what he's going to do. He will do the bare minimum and not worry about the consequences, because he knows he will not be held liable, and even if he is, he will just declare bankruptcy like he has done in the past and walk away and leave the pain and destruction from this pain for us to clean up. How can this township and Gateway engineer approve these plans based on what is listed here and not be held liable if something goes wrong? Chapter 780 of the Allegheny County Standard has new rules that require new development plans for projected increases in heavy rainfall under climate change rather than building to historical rainfall amounts. Is this township using those standards? New developments must be able to manage rainfall for the next 10, 20, or 50 years. We need to hold developers to a higher standards to manage the greater amount of rainfall we are seeing and going to see in the future. The storms of today are dropping 2.1 inches of rain within a 24-hour period. The South Park Storm Water Management Act maintains specific and extensive plans that are going to govern this new development. Will you be involved with this HOA to maintain these retention ponds? Flooding is the most financial and emotional devastating event that can happen to a homeowner, and even worse when it could have been prevented. What Mrs. Hill had to endure because of Frank Sakaitis is unimaginable. I personally don't want to go through what she had to, and I hope I won't have to. At the last meeting, this board made the point to say that they worked with Frank Sakaitis on another developer and have not had any problems. What about Larry Lagaza at 3795 Snowden Road? He currently went through a situation similar to the Hills, and the response from Gateway Engineering and South Park Township, in my opinion, has been less than adequate. He stated that he is being flooded from the new development on Snowden. His backyard is a swamp. The water looks toxic. Mr. Rolnick from Gateway Engineer, who represents the township, reviewed the water situation and had the contractor make some adjustments to the other side of the road. He also commented that currently the development site is in a temporary construction phase, and as soon as the storm water system is in place, everything will stay on the site and not run into his yard. The surface water was investigated but was not tested. This is beyond frightening to me. Mr. Lagaza was across the street from the development on Snowden, and look what he went through. I am on a hill directly below this proposed development. What happens when this hazardous toxic water runs through my pastures and put my horses in danger? Are you going to inform me to wait until construction is complete? What will I do in the meantime? How can I get through a flood? Where will my horses go? Will they be injured when the water is pouring into my barn? Where will they stay after the destruction of the barn? Forgive me if I don't have faith in our engineering firm, Gateway Engineering. Have they ever rejected a developer's plans? Do they evaluate how this is going to affect existing homes like mine? My future depends on the way you vote tonight, so please keep that in mind. Because if you are not 100% certain that this development poses no threat to my 70-year-old farm, then give the approval. But if you have any doubt about what I've questioned here tonight, please don't give the project the green light to proceed. Thank you.
Mr. Bukowitz, would you like to speak?
Microphone.
Why don't you come on up?
Dave Bukowitz, 1819 Edward Drive. One thing I want to say is if you approve this plan, you've got to make sure that there's bond money, enormous bond money, to cover any expenses that's going to be incurred once the developer moves on. Because he's done in the past, he has a history of it, so you better raise that bond money, get that money up high. So the bridge can work.
So this is protected, that's probably to be protected, this is a big deal. Big deal. Thank you.
Paul Smith.
Hi, it's Paul Smith at 1009 Old Post Road. A lot of things have been said today. I don't want to try to repeat them all. It's a shame that we have to have been this vocal in our criticisms and our comments. It's a shame that all of us had to research all these issues and point out all these problems. They should have anticipated these. All these issues, almost everything, was went through last year. Just and eventually, you know, the recommendations of the county were followed, and the project was rejected because it didn't meet the county's program. Clear and simple. And all the occurrence, they were all those problems all existed. The township knows all those issues. The developer never contacted the county for their input, didn't go see the people in the park to ask about what it really is necessary to protect the buffalo or not. We didn't go to the park and ask, what do you think about the buffalo issue now that we have arguably a confirming on the biggest fact. It's an R2, and it's R2 housing. Okay, is there still things we need to think about and ask this developer if he's going to pursue this project so that we in the township and the park are protected? All of us view the park as a resource, not a liability. Effectively, the stewards of the boundaries of the park and of the park itself to protect the assets that are a plus to the community, both here and for the whole county. And the park's assets are those things protected, and that includes the buffaloes. They're not a nuisance. They're a real thing that has real value, and I know that it's hard sometimes to take that and say, well, you know, there's other noises. But those noises have been exaggerated here today. You all know that. Every one of us in this room knows that. Those noises and those disruptions. And yet there's still disruptions that occur to that from still facility. The horse farms are businesses in this community. We talk about we want more businesses in the community. Well, one of the purposes of development plans and zoning ordinance by township communities is to protect the rights of the property owners to issue, as has been said, to do what they want with their property within the bounds of the law and their rights. But they also have an obligation, and these organizations, the zoning laws, the township, the planning commission, have an obligation to also protect the interests of those around that, of the rest of the community. Discretion in what he wants with his property. He can't destroy the livelihood of the business next to him. He can't destroy the livelihoods of the businesses of the horse farms. again, the horse farms are not nuisances. They're real things. The safety of the people in the hollow, around the hollow, is just as important. Everybody laughs about the driver's study, 75 to 1,000, or something like that, as serious as the road, and 75 cars. Well, the actual stimmer was 1,000 cars a day. That's cars. But again, let's point out, there's all the UPS vehicles, all the Amazon vehicles, everything else that comes, all the lawn care companies that come through that road every day. We've heard testimony that a school bus might not be feasible to go up into that community under the existing conditions. Well, then that means they're gonna let everybody off in that corner, that corner. Now, I live on Old Post Road. The school bus comes up my street and it stops at the top of the crest on the two sides. Old Post Road is sort of like an inverted V. And the bus stops right at the top. All the people who live on the bottom side of that road, half of the parents drive up there in their cars and park right in that intersection and then drive their kids back down to the bottom of the hill. You think that's not going to happen there? On my half of Old Post Road, I have neighbors that have 5 cars. So come on, clearly those numbers that were used to support all this traffic and safety issues are very understated. I can go on. It's a shame we ended up this way. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure on the township, to improve its tax base, to have money. But again, sometimes that's not really the benefit that looks too all the way around. Again, my wife and I, we strongly recommend that this development by this contractor be rejected.
Does anyone on the planning commission have any comments or questions that you would like to ask the developers, ask our staff?
I have several questions. Mr. Wetzel, you've heard a lot of discussion about the roadway, the culvert, the bridge. Basically the access from Stoltz Road on the Sleepy Hollow. Do you have any additional things to say or to share with the board, particularly regarding the bus access, two vehicles at a time access, and also how you're going to improve the roadway there to handle the increased traffic?
Yeah, we talked about in my presentation how we're gonna be able to widen the road to 22 feet wide.
I understand that.
As
I'm
well.
not talking about width.
Yeah, and then also with that, in regards especially to the culvert, by the wing wall revisions, being able to do the realignment of that road, so it's a little bit more square. Technically, you're allowed to have a 60-degree angle at that intersection. We've talked about how we've increased the road paving all the way through our development. The idea that there was testimony that buses cannot access, there's no testimony that was provided that it's hearsay in regard to bus access. Bus access will be able to come in and go down the improved roads that we're doing along Sleepy Hollow Road, and then also be able to either, they'll make their decision how they want to do it, but we have several loop areas where bus traffic can come out and then exit back out into the plane. So it provides a safe access for bus access within the area. So what we've done is, we also heard that the bridge located right through there currently is, we were told, is only 19 feet wide at that location.
I understand, but that's
No, it's not. That's a misstatement.
Thank you. My question does not have anything to do with that bridge. That's irrelevant to this question and this discussion. What I'm talking about is the bridge over the culvert, okay, in order to make sure that we can handle 1,000 vehicle trips a day, as your traffic study talked about, okay? Your study, not mine, that basically talked about having, egress and for both in and out for all the vehicles in this area, including school buses, freight trucks, UPS, Amazon, et cetera, that is going to do that. And I would ask you to address the county's evaluation. It says, seemed unlikely that repaving would be sufficient to bring the road up to the conditions that can handle the traffic from a new subdivision of more than 100 lots, particularly after heavy equipment traffic required to construct the development. You've talked about repaving. What about the substrata of the road? How are you going to handle that?
Once again, there will be requirements to do bonding and video in regard to the road. So if there is any damage to any of the road into there based on this development, they will have to, that's all part of the bond process that's provided. As I also mentioned.
You should go to the mic. Yeah, go to the microphone. They can't hear you back there.
We got a big bus.
He doesn't want you to hear the
There's a lot of people back there,
As mentioned, the road paving is being upgraded to township standards in regard to pavement depths, et cetera. So we're meeting all those requirements in regard to the road paving.
Okay, my second question is, excuse me, you're not at the microphone. My second question is regarding the risk of mine subsides. It's been rated as moderate for several of the lots in the plan. How do you plan to address that?
Well, it's all done by our geotech report. There are conditions that the DEP has in regard to the elevations above the mine. They're the one that sets the standards in regard to how they establish those categories. What's done is that under certain situations, and I'm not the geotech, but under those situations, and it was very similar in regard to the villas in South Park, that that improvements need to be done in regard to mine subsidence for particular lots that have been identified. Those will be done just similar to what was done in the villas in South Park.
Fair enough. And I guess the last question that I have is, as many of the taxpayers have talked about for kind of health and safety reasons, with the soil not being able to substantiate or not suitable to support proposed building foundations, how do you plan to address those concerns and those issues? And then the very last question, I'll ask it now, is how do you plan to handle stormwater management while in the construction phase?
Well, there's what's called a sequence of construction that's needed to be done with any soil and erosion control plan. That has to be not only reviewed by the township and the township engineer, but also when you get your NPDES permit, that has to be approved through that. They're the ones that set the guidelines in regard to reviewing our plans and following the stormwater management requirements of South Park. So we have all the regulations that we need to follow in regard to those requirements, as well as the NPDES permit. In regard to the geotech, we're going out, we're following the recommendations of the geotech report that when earth moving is done, all compactions will be met in regard to the requirements of the report. Those are being reviewed. There'll be a geotech representative on site that will provide all the necessary requirements in regard to the testing as the construction process moves forward.
Thank you.
Just ask one question. When they built the bridge down at the end of Sleepy Hollow, they had to build a temporary bridge. Are they planning on building a temporary bridge for the current residents?
So for people that couldn't hear the question, Ms. Gunn said that when they built the original culvert at the corner of Sleepy Hollow and Stoltz Road, they had to put a temporary bridge in.
No, that's at the end of Sleepy Hollow for the county building, when they built that new bridge.
Okay.
Okay.
And so the question is, would a temporary bridge need to be placed during that construction?
There's no need, because we're going to be keeping the road open with the when we widen the bridge wing walls. It's not necessarily a bridge, but the culvert wing walls. The road will remain open in regard to this use.
What about the telephone pole that's a big problem at that intersection? Will that be relocated?
So the question from Mr. Converse was regarding the telephone pole at the corner. I'm not sure where.
Can I show you?
I have pictures.
I don't know where that.
It's on the right.
Yeah, but I mean, is that our responsibility?
It's not his responsibility.
Okay, say it's not. Okay.
Utility relocation. In case you could hear me, is there any utility relocation involved in the plan that maybe we're just not aware of, whether it's a telephone pole or whether it's any existing?
There's some existing gas lines that are located.
May I show you a picture of it?
Be abandoned, but other ones within the property are going to be relocated by the gas company.
So there's no specific answer for the Converse's question on this specific pole?
We're not revising.
Actually,
We
on the
reviewed it, just feel there's no need to.
Correct.
Actually, on the paper you guys gave us, you can clearly see the shadow of the pole just fall to the edge of the shadow. You can see where it pulls out.
She's got a really good picture of it if you'd like to
Picture
see
of
it.
I have a good picture of it. Thanks.
I think I have a better one. And you
It's
see where
damaged.
somebody damaged it from hitting it.
Okay, so.
May I?
Yeah, sure. The answer to the question is, the answer from the developer to the question was that currently there is no plan to move the telephone pole or the utility in that particular part. Correct. Correct. It would be just, right now, gas lines are the extent of the utility system.
Correct. All utilities will be extended into the site.
It sounds like they're asking for a variance on the 12-foot Seldo rule to go to 11-foot. So are they really asking for a variance on that?
No,
I mean, they can't just
they're
ignore.
proposing an 11-foot lane with a 1-foot curb on each side.
But I
That's
think
24 feet.
I think the Saldo clearly in the county requested and required 12 foot.
Just, can you come up, please, so that everybody can hear?
Yeah.
Just to be clear, the developer has offered to widen the road to 11-foot lanes off-site. There are off-site improvements that he's proposed. The township standard is the 12-foot standard that they will be improving on their property. I apologize, I was unclear your question earlier, Adrian. But the offer is to do the off-site work at 11 feet because that's, I believe, Mike, you can answer this, but would fit. Correct.
It's a 35-foot right of way.
So
Why
there's
can't
not
you
a
fit
1-foot
12 feet
curb?
lanes?
There's not an additional 1-foot curb?
There is, but there's,
But it's
Mike,
a level
you
of
need
grade.
to, you
Okay.
need to explain.
Currently, the only paving, asphalt paving that's there today is right in through here, and there is no curbing on that plan. So all the improvements up to our property line will be that 22-foot cartway, but without curbs. No curbs proposed, because there are no curbs there today. Within our plan, we'll be providing the township standard width and curbing within our property frontage.
Only within your property, not the Stoltz Road, not on the bridge, so it doesn't meet
Right.
standards, I was correct about
Right.
the 12 foot.
Yes, you were.
Right, right.
They need a variance. They need a variance. How do we talk about there's no curb now? There's not 108 houses back there.
Right.
Right.
There's nothing back there. Of course it doesn't have curbs. It's a dirt road. How do you allow an improvement that's not an improvement? Come on.
And it's a 35-foot right of way. No reason you can't put a 24-foot road on a 35-foot right of way.
Yeah.
I have these questions.
We're, please wait. Carolyn, you had a comment, I believe?
I believe the road discussion that a couple of questions have been exchanged to try and consider these different widths is one, as the representative was just identifying, the current width without curbs is in an off-site location. And then the other road paving detail that has been provided as part of the plan is associated with improvements on site. And there is a specific difference when I'm identifying off-site and on-site. So the ways in which these things come together as part of any development, no matter the municipality, a developer is responsible for improvements on adjacent right-of-ways adjacent to their development, meaning on site. So the extension of the right-of-way that is shown in gray on the plan of Sleepy Hollow is on site, and that is what is getting improved to the township standard. So just as a matter of dimension.
To that point, the township could improve the section from Stoltz Road to the on-site section after the developer widened it to 23 feet.
As could the county on the other side where the other entrances, yes.
So the township taxpayers would have to pay to bring the road and the bridge up to standards
Right.
from the property to Stoltz Road.
Right.
You also pay for a sidewalk for safe passage since you're putting 108 houses.
And don't forget about the horse trail.
That's
Where's the
the
horse
township's responsibility, because it's the township road.
Which is not needed currently because there's only 4 houses.
Right.
And then what does the township have to pay where Stoltz meets 88 with an extra 1,000 cars coming out of Stoltz on 88? That road backs up as it is now. I mean, it's terrible. And Berryman as well.
To other members of the planning commission.
Toilet break.
Does anyone on the planning commission have any questions or comments? Further questions or comments? Last
I'm not planning. As a new member of the commission, I would say I've been provided everything that was provided at the prior meetings, so that I think I'm up to speed on next meetings. I have the necessary background to participate.
Thank you, sir. I just asked if there was any other questions or comments by the planning commission, because I think we've gotten a lot of very good feedback this evening, and I don't know how much additional information we're going to need in order to make a decision. But I would like to get your.
I apologize for.
No,
I just have one question for the professionals. Because what's in front of us is an action for consideration on a preliminary plan. If this would be approved, there's still additional action that would have to occur on a final one before it would move forward to the township supervisors for consideration. So what I'm concerned about is, has the developer met all of the requirements of the township and the county to the point that meets all the standards and compliance requirements? Based upon your reports, I'm asking.
Yeah, for preliminary, I think I stated earlier that the plan in terms of preliminary approval, the required information that South Park requires in its subdivision and land development ordinance has been met.
Because the concern becomes, is there a possible litigation that could further come down the road from the developer because he's met all of the requirements of the township? That's what's on my mind about that question. And I think it's important that we know whether, to make sure that at least at this stage, in the preliminary stage, that they've met all the requirements of the township. And of course, that's now been answered, so that was my question. Thank you.
Final comment here, please come forward and state your name for the record.
My name is Donald Johnson, 413 Lucy Drive, Baldwin Borough, neighboring community. And I have like 2, 3, maybe 4 questions. They all feed into one another. Where is Frank Sarkitis, the developer who's proposing this? Why can he not be bothered to be here? Does he give half a shit about anybody in this community?
Watch the language. First of all, his representation here. He does not need to be here, okay? Watch the language. Be respectful, Donald.
He sent lawyers here. He sent people specifically hired to speak for him, who I can guarantee are very good at doing that, who are very good at representing terrible ideas, because that's specifically what they get paid to do. So why should we trust him? Why should we think that this developer has any sense of respect for the community, the residents, or the board that oversees it?
That's right.
Why should we trust this guy? We shouldn't.
Mary, she's a neighbor, she needs
Gentlemen, I'll be brief, they asked me to step up. Gentlemen, good evening, I'll be brief, they asked me to step up. I'm a neighbor directly affected by this.
Can you state your name, please?
Mary Amoroso, I live at 1875 Stoltz Road, and I own and operate Horses Unlimited Stables at 1857 Stoltz Road. For further background, I am a certified American Riding Instructor Association trainer and barn manager, certified by the ARIA, which is a nationwide organization that promotes safety and excellence in the profession of horseback riding instruction. I'm also the former Allegheny County Director of the Pennsylvania Equine Council. I'm now retired. My stables is at the corner of Sleepy Hollow Road and Stoltz, and I, as well as many of the other nearby stables, will be directly impacted by this construction. Every day I hold my breath as I watch horses, many of them ridden by children, navigate the road on Stoltz to get to Sleepy Hollow Road. Once we're on Sleepy Hollow Road, I can breathe again because they're safe. With all this construction of 108 houses and all that traffic, it's going to be very dangerous for those horses and those children. And I also want to point out that Section 3103 of the Motor Vehicle Code states that every person riding an animal or driving an animal-drawn vehicle upon a roadway is granted all of the rights and shall be subject to all the duties available to a driver. In other words, horses have all the rights of cars, and we can and will use the road. But if the Sleepy Hollow construction goes forward, the road will become unsafe with all the new increased traffic. A horse trail would be needed to be installed, or howls will be made safe for horseback riders that have used that road for a century. Traffic will slow, and impatient cars are going to whip across yellow lines to avoid horses because we do go much more slowly and we do cause delays. The only way to allow normal traffic flow and protect the safety of the horses and the riders is to have the developer install a dedicated horse trail wide enough for rider safety. And I'm not speaking of a simple bike trail. You're talking about two 1,000-pound animals passing each other in the night. I'm going to briefly touch the buffalo because I had the unique experience of having leased the stables next door to the property in question for many years. For many years, I taught and boarded at Patty Nikoloff's Sleepy Hollow Barn. And we had an agreement with Carmen. It was unspoken, unwritten, but we could ride through his property, and we actually had a riding rink there. You can see the remnants of it to this day. And Carmen would come up to the barn, and he would use the water and the telephone there. You know, it was a mutual agreement. This is before cell phones, so he was able to use the phone there. I can tell you from personal experience, it takes mere minutes from that property to get to the Buffalo. So it's no 1,600 feet, it's much closer than that. And lastly, I just want to say, I feel really bad for Bonnie and her barn. I know she's terrified because I know she's right from what I've heard tonight about this developer. And also, I'm the next door neighbor of Jim's, and I watched his home burn while the emergency vehicles tried to get past that telephone pole in that corner. So that would have to be addressed, and that bridge has to be widened much more than they're suggesting to handle all that traffic, to handle all those buses, and just for the safety of everybody concerned. And lastly, I've been a resident from South Park since 1999, and I chose to live here. I wasn't born here. I chose to live here, partially because of the majestic woods. Right. So I hope you leave them that way. And I appreciate your time.
Would you get upset if I just said something really quick that hasn't been touched on at all? Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm Whitney Gassmeyer, 962 Westchester. I just wanted to say really quick that the stream that runs through Sleepy Hollow Run does connect to other water bodies, Piney Fork and Peters Creek. And I spoke to somebody from the Peters Creek watershed, and they were saying that like about 20 years ago, there was they were doing some testing in the water, and there was a high bacterial content and whatever, and that's obviously dangerous for the neighboring communities and stuff. So actually, they received a grant through the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. It was a Growing Greener grant. It was a substantial grant, and they were able to get it back up to a normal limit. And actually, they, if you want me to say it, following the bacterial study to help ameliorate, the bacterial loading, which included working with a local horse farmer, developing riparian buffer. We also worked with the Allegheny County Conservation District, and then also that the Peters Creek has been stocked by the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission in the last couple of years. And for years before that, before they got their grant, they were able to make repairs. It was too polluted by excess sewage and abandoned mine drainage to be stocked by the state. Okay, so up until that point, it would be stocked by the Tri-Community Anglers in South Park Township and Jefferson Hills Borough. Piney Fork is, but now this, Sleepy Hollow Run is one of only a handful of streams stocked by the state in Allegheny County. This guy from Peters Creek says that one of his greatest fears of new development is that a source of this abandoned mine drainage will be uncovered and added to Sleepy Hollow Run. This has occurred in other parts of the watershed and has the potential to negatively impact water quality both within Sleepy Hollow Run and streams below, including Piney Fork and Peters Creek. So I just wanted to point that out really quick, and I also wanted to say, because it's kind of silly, because right here in the lobby, we have this pamphlet from the DEP that says guidelines for maintaining streams in your community, and we know that this is all connected. So even if this is all fits the bill of what could legally be voted and approved for, we still would open, I believe, as a township, open ourselves up from litigation from other communities as to what we'd be dumping into that creek. So I just wanted to say that. Oh, and also really quick, there's been a number of accidents on Stoltz Road, specifically right at the one at Sleepy Hollow and Stoltz Road. I know that there was an accident in, let me see, there was one prior to 1984. I know that's a long time ago. It's running out of batteries. Prior to 1984, there was an accident there. There was one in 93, there was one in 97, and then we all know about the one on 2017. So unless, I think that would be important to maybe find out from the chief what the incidences have been of accidents there, because if there's already accidents, if there's accidents, serious and deadly accidents that have happened on that road, then it would be important to find out how much this would exacerbate the problem. Oh, and the last thing is obviously the bats. If there's any, I'm somewhat worried that whoever the developer might hire to do any sort of study for to obtain those permits, might run the regular like PNDI source or search or whatever the index, and nothing might be flagged. Now the problem that I ran into is that at any time the township could request an evaluation of the land to find out if there is any endangered species on there. But like I as a regular citizen can't request that. I think even you all could, but I'm not sure how that works. But I know the township could. So let's say the developer ends up running that search, nothing comes back, and then the shagbark, hickories, and other trees that are habitats for the bats would get removed. And it's not just about the bats, obviously they control like, so much insects, and so it's a good thing. So I feel like, whatever you decide to do, and I know that you can't make ordinances and codes and things like that, but I think that there needs to be some kind of agreement about just having somebody double check stuff, just to make sure that everything is really above board. That's all I have. Thank you.
If I could ask one more question. Listen to my whole response before you start moving. I don't worry about the streets as much because the streets can be addressed. I don't worry about the bridge and the turning as much because that can be addressed. So I live on a street. I've been a resident of South Park for 42 years now, since 1982. My kids have gone to school here. There's been developments around me that were concerns, and I went to the meetings because I was concerned to hear how a development was going to affect me. I don't work, like I said, I live on a dead-end street that only has one access, has about 100 homes on it, and I can tell you, there's probably not 76 cars that leave in the morning, but there's not 1,000. It's probably, honestly, somewhere in between that. We can walk down our street without worrying about getting hit. We can let our kids play on the street without being hit, so I don't worry about that as much. My main concern that I think everyone brought up, which makes this unique, because mines aren't unique to South Park. There may be an area that's a little different than what my street was, but my street had mine issues, the streets below me did. We had water concerns that we had to address, like everyone else does, and they can be addressed. I don't have an issue with that. The concern I have in all our discussions last month and this month are with the horses. Because in every other development I've only been on the planning commission for about 6 or 7 years now, we've never had to approve a property concern or a new development concern that had horses on it, right? It's just something a little different. Everything else we can address, and we've done it successfully. You may not like where it was, because no one likes it near them. I just had a development one street over from me where my neighbors' backyards, where they enjoyed the woods and dumping their grass and their yard clippings in the woods, lost out when this new development came in because their backyards, are joined now. But that's part of life. When you buy property near property that's undeveloped, you have to expect someday that maybe, possibly, someone's going to develop it. The horses are my concern because that's unique to this property. I haven't really heard anything about, other than buses and cars and traffic. The horses aren't just confined to their property. They have a reason to wander out and be used as horses are used. Was there ever any consideration for any kind of horse pass or just some allotment for some additional area where the horses would be and the owners would feel safe? Because it's obvious, listening to the experts that own the horses, that this would not be safe for their horses.
Well, once again, a lot of the road is a 33-foot right-of-way, and we're widening that to the best of our ability in regard to the 22.
We're talking about them walking on a road now that doesn't have much traffic to walking on a road that has a lot more traffic. Potentially more traffic.
I live in a community that there are all sort of horse farms. There are hunts. I go down the road, and this is a state road, a county road, and a local road that have hunts. On those hunts, we'll probably have 30 horses. On those hunts, we'll also have 20 to 30 dogs. They all share the road. They all share the road together.
Where do you live?
So there's no current plan for anything additional to address?
No.
No, that's a big no. That's a big no.
So, once again, ladies and gentlemen, we have, there are two items on our agenda this evening. One is the application for this preliminary subdivision, is it complete per our ordinances? And then the second item is, what do we do? Do we recommend, do we not recommend? So, as a reminder, we are making a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. So once again, regardless of how we vote, this will go to the Board of Supervisors on the May 13th, yes, May 13th, Board of Supervisors meeting, okay, regardless of what we do here this evening. So the first item is for preliminary, is the application.
Excuse me, I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm very confused about the process. The engineer said that everything's complete now, everything else will be done later on before its final approval.
Yes.
Everything's going to be fixed. What exactly is going to be fixed between now and May 13th?
Right.
Nothing. This is preliminary
But
plans.
what are the Board of Supervisors going to have that's complete? Are they seriously going to have this complete submission
They're going
that the
to
engineer
have-
says we'll have?
They are going to have the same plans that we have. It's for
And the
preliminary.
same shortcomings?
Yes.
Planning commissions don't give final.
No,
I understand. I understand that. We all understand that.
This is
But I'm trying to understand what's going to happen in the next 2.5 weeks.
This is for preliminary plans.
Assuming you make approve a recommendation to go ahead. And what's the supervisor going to have that's any better? Are any of these holes going to be filled in? The engineer says they're going to be. 6 pages from
The issue, so once again, this is preliminary. If we approve it, or recommend it, I should say, and it goes to the Board of
Okay,
Supervisors.
so essentially you're saying it starts your problem if they're not complete on the 13th.
If the Board of Supervisors approves the preliminary plan, the developer has to come back through for final plans. So they're
Comes back
proposing
through
to
to
do
who?
this.
Back to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a second approval group
Why
process?
can't we do that before the approval?
The proposal is that this development would be built in 3 phases. So they would come back, so preliminary is tonight. We're not talking about any final plans. The supervisors would then vote, one way or the other, on the preliminary plans. If the supervisors approve it, then the developer is going to come up with the final plans for phase 1, and that section would come back to the planning commission for review once again, and back to the Board of Supervisors for their approval.
And that happens with each.
That would happen with each phase. So this is a long process. This is step 1 of
So
100 steps.
the next approval by the supervisors is just to simply go get all your permits and everything like that? No, it's to put a final plan together to submit.
That
No permits or anything, you're way
Oh,
And no tree comes down.
Once they rip the trees out, it's a done deal.
There is no, until a final approval is approved, there's no trees ripped out.
They've already ripped them out.
That's because they have to do geo studies. You can't say there's mines here,
Yeah,
there's
no,
that
I-
without doing studies.
yeah, I understand
And
that.
you could argue they ripped on too many, and I'd probably agree they may have ripped on more than they had to. But you can't do the studies.
Let's find them
You
for
can't
it.
do the studies without getting in there to do the study. So,
I'm not contesting that. I'm not contesting that. That's the property owner's right to see what he can do with his land. There's no doubt about that. But I'm trying to figure out exactly where does this thing actually get an approval before it's too late to stop? Because at some point in time, once he begins work, you have to swallow it.
it's about 4 steps away. Like Russ said, we have to either approve or not approve. Let's just say we don't approve it tonight. And May 13th, it goes to the supervisors.
And they decide whether they like
They
it.
could decide to approve it based on our recommendation to not approve it. And then after that, they put a final plan together, comes in front of us, to approve or not approve, and the supervisors look at that before any permits or trees or anything. So it's a ways away.
Excuse me,
But they've already ripped some trees out.
We talked about that. We talked about that last month. That was the geo stuff.
I was here last month, and the problem is, I forget one of you gentlemen said that you expressed surprise that this had happened.
Yeah, so we asked him why. And that's when they explained to us that it was in to do the study.
All right, well, I just recently heard again this evening, someone made a comment, they were surprised to hear that. One of you gentlemen was not aware that they've removed trees up there.
A lot of trees.
Did Red Rocks do that last year? Because I don't remember that being a Red Rocks.
Right.
They were looking for
So they did their study.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to vote on this. And I don't know how the board's gonna vote. Yes, Carolyn.
Just as a matter of land use in Pennsylvania, across the Commonwealth, forestry is a permissible land use in every zoning district of every community. I'm just identifying that point in fact. Thank you.
That was a lot. That was great.
First item is to address.
Can I say one thing? Just real quick.
No, come on, we're gonna move on.
Six-page letter from him. Do you feel that his questions from his 6-page letter from 5 weeks ago have all been answered about his opinion on the subdivision plan? Do you feel the engineer's questions were all answered? If they weren't, then why are you voting on it?
I think they all were answered, and I'm ready to vote.
Read it.
We know his vote. So, once again, so the first item is the plan complete? Are all the i's dotted, the t's crossed? So, for the application. We need a motion to accept, not accept, or table this preliminary application for a major subdivision as being complete per the subdivision and land development ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, in order to move this process along, I will make a motion to accept the preliminary application because it complies with all of the requirements of the township. And I would move forward for that. I would make that motion.
Greedy bastard.
Is there a second?
I will second it.
Who seconded?
Mr. Papanchek seconded.
Thank you. All those in
Can you
favor?
please pull the board?
Can you pull the board, please?
Individually. All those in favor
Of accepting
of accepting
the application.
as complete, as accepting the application. All those in favor of accepting the application?
I'm going to be specific, if I may, please. It's accepting the application as the items as required in terms of the particular pages and the reports that are necessary, et cetera, are the ones, that is what the, motion is regarding. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, we have a motion by Patrick Sable to accept, seconded by John Papenchak. Do we have all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining.
Oh, please.
I'll accept the application. Accept it.
It's just the application.
Okay, so the motion passed. Mr. Wykoff has abstained.
Yes.
The second item is we need a motion to recommend, not recommend, or table this application for preliminary approval for a major subdivision to be located along Sleepy Hollow Road, lot block number 771-F-75.
Mr. Chairman, this is John Papenchak. I will make a motion to not recommend this application.
So we have just,
Mr. Chairman, I will second that motion.
Mr. Chairman. Well,
Excuse me.
go ahead.
Legally, I have absolutely no reason that I'm allowed to defeat this program. Socially, morally, I have a very strong conscience to understand the will of the people. We have listened.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the person that has to transcribe these notes. So the motion was made by John Papenchak to not recommend. Adrian Weil seconded that, in addition to Mr. Wykoff. So, all those in favor of not recommending this, please indicate now.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So motion is carried. So we have, so just to reiterate for the crowd, the paperwork was accepted. The plan is not recommended to the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you.
So the next step, this will go to the Board of Supervisors on May 13th. They will have the opportunity to listen to your comments, and they will have the opportunity to decide whether to follow this recommendation or not. So that will be their choice. So the next regular meeting of the Planning Commission is scheduled for Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024 at 7 p.m. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
You do.
Second. All those in favor?